Let's talk about one of the most important tools in modern technology, logistic regression. Now that might sound a little dry, but trust me, the story behind it is anything but. It's a nearly 200-year-old tale of forgotten genius, a lucky rediscovery, and a brilliant pivot that literally changed the world.
So, to get started, let's ask a really fundamental question. It's something that scientists were wrestling with back in the 19th century, and it's still just as relevant today. How do things, populations, companies, ideas, how do they actually grow?
Well, it's tempting to think of growth like this J-shaped curve on the left, right? Just this endless rocket ship ride straight up. But reality doesn't really work that way. There are always limits: resources, space, competition. And that's where the S-shaped curve comes in. It's so much more realistic. It shows things starting slow, then taking off, but eventually leveling out as they hit a ceiling.
And it's that very problem, that flaw in the simple growth goes on forever model, that's where our story really kicks off. And it all starts with a Belgian astronomer who took a wild career turn into statistics.
So you've got this guy, Adolf Quetelet, back in the early 1800s. He's looking at these population models, and he's thinking, wait a minute, this can't be right. The models everyone was using predicted that populations would just grow and grow forever, leading to these absurd, impossible numbers. He knew they were broken because, well, they didn't account for the real world.
And here's the math behind that broken idea. It basically says the bigger you are, the faster you grow. And look, it actually worked pretty well for things like the early US population when there was tons of room to expand. But Quetelet knew that party couldn't last forever.
So he goes to his star student, a guy named Pierre-François Verhulst, and he basically gives him a challenge. He says, forget this infinite growth stuff. I need you to find a mathematical function that acts like real life, one that starts slow, speeds up, and then gracefully flattens out as it hits some kind of limit. And what Verhulst came up with, it was beautiful. It was elegant, incredibly powerful, and decades ahead of its time. And then, poof, it was almost completely forgotten.
This is it. This is his creation. Verhulst called it the logistic function, and it's the perfect mathematical recipe for that S-curve we saw. It perfectly captures that whole life cycle of growth inside a system that has limits. Its output, that P of t, represents the proportion of the total possible population smoothly moving from 0% all the way to 100%.
And this wasn't just some abstract theory, right? His model was shockingly good. In one of his papers, he predicted that the ceiling for Belgium's population would be around 9.5 million people. Today, it's about 11 million. Think about that. He was predicting almost 200 years into the future and was totally in the ballpark. His guess for France was a bit further off, sure, but it still showed just how powerful his idea was. But, and this is where the story gets really tragic, Verhulst publishes all this incredible work in the 1830s and 40s, and then, just 2 years after his last paper, he dies. He was young and his health was poor. And with its champion gone, his brilliant logistic function just faded away. It was lost to science for more than 70 years. But, an idea this good, this fundamental, it can't stay buried forever. It was just a matter of time before a new generation of scientists facing the exact same problem would stumble upon it again.
And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Fast forward to 1920. You have two American researchers, Raymond Pearl and Lowell Reed. They're studying U.S. population growth, and having no idea that Verhulst ever existed, they independently come up with the exact same curve. They started applying it to everything: fruit flies, humans, you name it.
This was their big prediction, the ultimate saturation point for the population of the United States. Now, obviously, we've blown past that number, but that's not the point. Their work was what brought the S-curve roaring back to life as a fundamental way to think about growth in biology. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. Pretty soon after their first paper came out, someone rediscovered Verhulst's original work. But Pearl and Reed were, let's say, a little slow to give him credit. At first, he was just mentioned in a tiny footnote. By 1923, they were citing him, but they still called his work long since forgotten. Yeah, that's one way to describe a 70-year gap. Okay, so this is the real turning point of the whole story. This is the big twist. We've got this amazing tool for modeling how populations grow over time. So how in the world did that become one of the most popular algorithms for predicting simple yes or no answers in machine learning? This right here is the incredible leap in thinking. The logistic function, by its very nature, spits out a value between 0 and 1. For Verhulst, that was simple. It was the proportion of a total population.
But what if that number could mean something else entirely? This is the pivot that took a dusty 19th century demographic tool and turned it into a cornerstone of modern AI.
And this is the genius move, laid out plain and simple. We're not talking about quantities anymore. The insight was to completely reframe the output as a probability. So now an output of 0.8 doesn't mean you're at 80% of your maximum population. It means there's an 80% chance of a yes, an 80% chance a customer will click the ad, or an 80% chance a patient has a specific condition. It's a total game changer.
Okay, so let's peek under the hood just a little bit. How does the modern version of this actually work? How do we take a bunch of different factors, run them through some math, and get a reliable probability out the other side?
It's actually a really clever three-step dance. So you start with a simple linear equation, right? But the output of that can be any number, positive or negative infinity. That's not helpful for a 0 to 1 probability. So step 2, you do this little trick to convert it to an odds ratio, which forces everything to be a positive number. Okay, we're getting warmer. And then, the final magic trick, you apply a logarithm, and bam! It maps that entire range of positive numbers perfectly onto our beautiful 0 to 1 S-curve.
But okay, for any set of data, there are tons of possible S-curves you could draw. How does the algorithm find the absolute best one? Well, it uses a method called maximum likelihood estimation. The easiest way to think about it is that the computer tries on hundreds of different curves, like trying on pairs of glasses, and it picks the one single curve that makes the data it's already seen look the most plausible, the most, well, likely.
And at the end of the day, what's it all for? It's all about one thing: minimizing mistakes. The modern logistic regression model is basically an error correction engine. It uses a process like gradient descent to constantly fine-tune itself, nudging the curve shape a tiny bit here, a tiny bit there, over and over, until it gives the most accurate yes or no predictions it possibly can.
So when you step back and look at it, what an incredible story. This idea was born from a super practical problem almost 200 years ago. It was created by this forgotten genius, Verhulst, then it was lost for decades, rediscovered by chance, and then completely transformed by one brilliant idea, reinterpreting its output from a quantity to a probability. And today, it's an absolute workhorse of modern machine learning. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other amazing ideas are out there, just like Verhulst's logistic curve, hiding in some dusty old papers or forgotten footnotes, just waiting for someone to find them and turn them into something that will power our future?